You know, it's a curious thing about life, isn't it? The most significant challenges, things that really shake things up, they aren't always completely new.
Right.
Often they're echoes,
Yes.
familiar patterns just
Mm-hmm.
repeating.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, when they pop up again, we often act so surprised, like, whoa, where did that come from?
Mm.
It's this weird collective blind spot.
It is. It's a fascinating paradox, really. This human tendency to just fixate on novelty, on the brand new thing.
Yeah.
And it means we often miss the history repeating itself right under our noses. It's a bias, a cognitive bias that can, well, lead us pretty far astray sometimes. We're looking at the horizon for something totally alien,
Uh-huh.
while the same old risks are kind of gathering dust, getting ready to trip us up again.
That is such a perfect setup for what we're diving into today. We're getting into Morgan Housel's book, Same as Ever.
Great book.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it flips that whole what's new obsession right on its head. Housel basically argues that the most important lessons for figuring out the future,
Yeah.
they aren't in what's changing. They're in understanding what doesn't change.
Exactly.
His whole idea is like the best way to prep for tomorrow is to really get a handle on the stuff that's, well, same as ever. It feels like a breath of fresh air in this world that's just obsessed with constant change.
It really does. And it encourages this a profound shift in focus, doesn't it? Instead of chasing every trend or trying to nail the perfect prediction.
Which is impossible.
Right. Basically impossible. Housel says, hang on, anchor yourself in the fundamentals. And he's got form here, obviously, with the psychology of money. He's just brilliant at distilling these big ideas.
Yeah, making them feel simple almost.
Simple but powerful. And Same as Ever does that again. It's comforting in a way because these truths are stable, but it's also challenging because, well, it forces you to admit how often we ignore them. It makes you confront your own, attraction to novelty over these enduring principles.
Okay, so our mission for you listening right now is to give you a bit of a shortcut through this.
Yeah.
We want to pull out the core insights from Same as Ever, help you cut through all that noise about what's changing and get really clear on the things that don't change much. Human behavior, risk, how we think long term.
Yeah, the bedrock stuff.
Exactly. The goal is to give you a framework, a way to navigate this, let's face it, unpredictable world. Not by trying to predict every twist, but by understanding that unchanging foundation everything's built on. Hopefully you walk away feeling a bit more grounded, ready to tackle things.
Sounds good.
All right, let's dive in. One of Housel's biggest points right off the bat is just how consistent human behavior is.
Oh.
It's kind of wild when you think about it. We like to think we've evolved so much. We've got smartphones, AI is booming, people are literally flying to space for fun.
Right, the external changes are massive.
Huge. But Housel's point is, deep down, that inner wiring, it's pretty much the same as our great-great-grandparents. The technology changes, the platforms change. Maybe we argue on Twitter instead of, I don't know, in the village square.
Yeah.
But the reasons we argue, the underlying emotions, the impulses, they're ancient.
And that's such a crucial point because these deep-seated drives, they don't really care about the century we're in or the tech we have.
Right.
They still dictate so much of what we do individually and, collectively. Housel lists them out. Greed, panic, that urge to follow the crowd.
Oh, yeah, the herd mentality.
Definitely. And the need for control, fear, envy, hope, pride. These core emotions, they're the constants. It points to this unchanging psychological bedrock under everything.
It's humbling, isn't it? We think we're so advanced, but
But we're still driven by these very old impulses. Like Housel says, quite bluntly, what drives people has never changed and never will. It's a bold statement, but hard to argue with when you look around.
and you really see it playing out. I mean, think about financial markets. These cycles, booms and busts. Why do they keep happening? We know about tulip mania. We know about a dot-com bubble.
We have all the history, all the data.
Exactly. But bubbles still inflate. Because, like Housel points out, it's the same human stuff every time. Greed takes over. People pile in because everyone else is.
Fear of missing out. FOMO.
Total FOMO.
Yeah.
And that classic dangerous thought. This time it's different.
Ah, yes. The four most expensive words in investing, they say.
Right. The asset might change. Tulips, tech stocks, houses, crypto, whatever's next. But the psychology, that irrational exuberance, it's the same old story. And it's not just big market stuff. It's individual choices, too. Like, why do get-rich-quick schemes always find an audience?
Oh, perpetually.
They prey on that timeless desire, right?
Yeah.
For the easy way out, the fast track. Wealth without the work.
It bypasses logic. Goes straight for the emotional buttons.
Yeah. Whether it's some pyramid scheme back in the day or a dodgy crypto coin now, the pitch works.
Yeah.
Because that human yearning for a shortcut, for something, for nothing,
Yeah.
it just doesn't go away. The packaging changes, but the lure is identical.
And if you zoom out, this idea that the human software is constant while the hardware changes, that's got huge implications.
How so?
Well, it means understanding this isn't just, an interesting observation. It's a practical tool for anticipating problems, for designing better systems.
Like financial regulations, maybe?
Exactly. Or even just how you structure your own life and decisions. If you accept that greed and fear are always going to be lurking, then you can build in your own safeguards. You can cultivate habits that account for them. It pushes you, the listener, to ask, how can I make better decisions knowing these vulnerabilities are always there, in me and in others?
Right. It's about managing the unchanging parts of ourselves.
Precisely. It encourages looking past the surface, changes the new tech, the new trends, and focusing on those core human elements. They're always the biggest variables in the equation. True innovation might even be about finding better ways to handle these old impulses.
Okay, let's switch gears slightly. Housel has this other really interesting kind of counterintuitive idea about where big surprises come from.
Ah, yes, this one's fascinating.
He says they usually don't come from totally new alien threats, things we couldn't possibly imagine. More often, they spring from familiar things, familiar risks that we've just kind of forgotten to take seriously.
We've let our guard down.
Exactly. We spend all this energy looking for the black swan.
Yeah.
Right, that completely unforeseen event. But Housel suggests we should probably be paying more attention to the regular swans we've stopped noticing. The surprises are often hiding in plain sight.
It's so true. Our attention gets pulled towards the flashy, the complex, the novel, while the ordinary, the known but ignored risks, they just quietly build up pressure. It creates this massive blind spot. We think, oh, I know about that risk, it's familiar, and we mentally downgrade it.
Familiar equals safe in our heads.
Exactly. Even when history screams otherwise, that tendency to just take known dangers for granted because they've been around a while, that's a recurring human failing.
Housel nails this with examples. Like the 2008 financial crisis, we talk about the human drivers.
Greed, leverage.
Yeah. He basically says it wasn't some exotic new force. It was good old-fashioned greed and leverage, stuff that's caused crises for centuries.
Since the dawn of lending, probably.
Right. So the surprise in 2008 wasn't what the risk was. It was the sheer scale and the timing. It caught almost everyone off guard, even though the core ingredients were ancient history. We were unprepared for a very old story playing out in a modern setting. Or think about COVID-19, the idea of a global pandemic. Definitely not new.
Not at all. Scientists, historians, even movie makers warned about it for ages.
We've had the Spanish flu, the plague. I mean, history is littered with pandemics. So the shock with COVID wasn't the concept of a virus spreading globally.
Right.
It was the specifics, this virus, this timing, this level of disruption. We were caught flat-footed, despite plenty of warnings and historical precedent.
Which leads perfectly into Housel's analogy.
Oh, the snake analogy is brilliant. He says it's like walking through the same forest every single day. You know the forest.
You feel comfortable there.
Exactly. Then one day, bam, you get bitten by a snake, and you're shocked. But Housel says the snake's always been there. You just stopped paying attention. You got complacent.
It's such a powerful metaphor for how familiarity dulls our sense of risk. Transforms known dangers into these bolts from the blue just because our vigilance slipped.
It really makes you think.
It absolutely does. And it challenges us, doesn't it? To really cultivate a deeper respect for history, for these recurring patterns. Less focus on the totally bizarre, maybe, and more on reevaluating the familiar threats we've gotten used to. Which brings up a question for you, listening. In your own world, your finances, your job, your relationships, what familiar things might you be underestimating? Where's the snake you've stopped actively looking out for because you walk that path every day?
Oof, that's a searching question.
It is. It's about developing that awareness of enduring risks, not just chasing the latest potential crisis. It requires a certain humility, admitting that the biggest dangers might be the ones we think we know best.
Let's talk about control now. Because, well, we all want it.
Oh, desperately. It's a core human craving.
We make plans, set goals, analyze everything. We try so hard to steer the ship. But Housel hits us with the reality. Most of life is just out of our hands.
It's a tough pill to swallow sometimes.
Totally. Think about the big stuff. The economy, what other people decide to do, huge global events.
Geopolitics, natural disasters.
Right. But even small things, like you can't control your boss's mood or if it's going to rain on your picnic, so much is just external,
Yeah.
beyond our direct influence.
And that friction between our desire for control and the reality of unpredictability, that's where a lot of stress comes from.
Definitely.
So the question becomes, if absolute control is mostly an illusion, how do you still act effectively? How do you prepare without tying yourself in knots with anxiety or just giving up and becoming fatalistic?
Yeah, finding that balance.
Housel's insight here feels quite liberating, actually. Acknowledging the uncontrollable isn't about weakness. It's just accepting a fundamental truth. The wisdom is in focusing your energy where it actually can make a difference.
And this ties into another killer line from the book, one that really stuck with me. Risk is what's left when you think you've thought of everything.
That's a powerful definition.
Isn't it? We try so hard to predict risk, right? Will the market crash? Will AI take my job? Is my company stable? We want certainty.
We want to map it all out.
But Housel's point is stark. The biggest risks, the ones that truly blindside you, are precisely the ones you didn't predict. Because if you had seen them coming clearly...
You'd have done something about it?
Exactly. You'd have prepared. It wouldn't be a risk anymore. It'd just be a known factor in your plan. The real danger lies in the unknown unknowns.
And this demands that fundamental shift in mindset we talked about earlier, away from trying to be a perfect fortune teller.
Which is exhausting and impossible.
And towards building resilience. Building systems, whether financial, personal, or professional, that are robust enough to handle surprises, to absorb shocks.
So it's less about avoiding being wrong and more about being able to afford to be wrong sometimes.
Precisely. Housel's advice isn't to stop planning, but to build systems that can take a hit. That requires humility, admitting you don't know everything, that you will be surprised. And that humility is what separates survival from collapse when chaos hits. It's about strengthening your capacity to adapt, not trying to control every variable.
But just to be super clear, he's not saying, oh, well, things are out of control, so just drift along.
No, not at all. That would be fatalism.
Right. He talks about flexible planning. And I love his analogy for this. It's like carrying an umbrella.
Simple, but effective.
Totally. You cannot control the rain. You can wish, you can hope, you can check the forecast 10 times. But you can't make it not rain. But what can you do? You can be ready. You carry an umbrella or a raincoat, or you have plan B that's indoors.
Yeah.
You accept you don't control the weather, but you take sensible steps to prepare for it.
That's the essence of flexible planning.
Yeah. His point is, plans are vital. They give you direction, focus, but don't fall in love with your specific blueprint. Don't clutch it so tightly you can't adjust.
Because the world will change the circumstances.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
The world will rewrite your plan for you, probably multiple times. Your job isn't to fight that. It's to be agile enough to adapt your strategy when it happens. Keep the destination in mind, but be flexible about the route.
And that philosophy, that dynamic readiness, it goes beyond just surviving bumps in the road. It leans towards anti-fragility.
Anti-fragility.
Yeah.
Like getting stronger from chaos.
Exactly. Not just resisting shocks, but actually benefiting from them, learning, adapting, becoming more robust because of the disruption. You see this in practice everywhere. Diversifying skills in your career makes you more resilient to industry shifts.
Wow.
Having an emergency fund and diverse investments in finance acts as that umbrella for market storms or unexpected expenses. It's about encouraging you, the listener, to consciously build that adaptability into everything: life, work, money. So you don't just endure surprises, you actually evolve through them.
Okay, this next one from Housel really speaks to me, and probably to a lot of listeners who are, the planners, the overthinkers.
Yeah, spreadsheet enthusiasts.
Yes, guilty as charged sometimes. Housel is huge on long-term thinking. And he argues that often the best decisions, the ones that really pay off massively down the line, feel kind of boring in the moment.
The unsexy stuff.
Totally unsexy. Our culture loves the quick win, the dramatic breakthrough, the overnight success. But Housel champions the power of the slow burn, the consistent, quiet actions.
Like what kinds of actions?
Well, think about just consistently saving money, even small amounts, week after week, year after year. It's not exciting.
Yeah.
It doesn't make for a thrilling Instagram post.
No immediate dopamine hit there.
None. But over decades, it builds serious wealth. Or consistently practicing kindness, being empathetic. No one gives you an award for holding the door or truly listening to someone.
Right.
But it builds trust. deepens relationships, creates this incredible support network over time. Same with regular exercise.
Yeah.
One gym session changes nothing visibly, but years of it. Transformative for your health. Or simply making a habit of listening more than you talk. It's not flashy, but wow, does it build understanding and connection. These things don't grab headlines, but their long-term impact is immense, way bigger than any short-term thrill.
And what's so fascinating is how universal that principle of compounding is. It's not just finance, is it?
No, he applies it broadly.
It's like a fundamental law. Building expertise takes years of consistent practice. Building a strong community comes from countless small acts of support, not one big event. It really forces you to ask yourself, am I valuing consistency over intensity? Am I patiently doing the boring work that builds something lasting? Or am I always chasing the next exciting thing that fizzles out?
And he uses that beautiful oak tree analogy.
Oh, I love that one.
It's perfect. You plant this tiny acorn, and for ages, nothing seems to happen. It's just dirt.
Feels like wasted effort sometimes.
Right. It's not dramatic, but wait 10, 20, 50 years. And that acorn is a massive, powerful oak, providing shade, shelter, an incredible return on that small, patient initial act. It's such a great visual for how small, consistent inputs gather unbelievable momentum over time.
And connecting that to the bigger picture, it really hammers home that massive success is usually built brick by boring brick.
Yeah.
It's the diligent accumulation of sensible actions, compounding knowledge, building a reputation, mastering a skill, nurturing relationships. It all works the same way. It requires patience, persistence, and embracing that boring path because you understand the quiet magic of time and consistency. It's the antidote to our instant gratification culture.
Same as ever, is full of these short, punchy chapters like little essays.
Yeah.
A few really jump out. There's one called Wild Minds and Quiet Hands.
Intriguing title.
It is, and it's about that powerful mix, having really big, creative, expansive ideas, the wild mind part, but then combining it with disciplined, steady, consistent work to actually make it happen, the quiet hands.
The vision and the execution.
Exactly. It's a reminder that dreaming is essential, but it's the doing, the often unglamorous follow-through that actually changes things. You need both the wild ideas and the steady hands to build something real.
That balance Housel points to is key, isn't it? That tension between imagination and practical application. Vision alone is just fantasy. Action without vision can be pointless busy work. Real progress, he suggests, comes from that interplay, the what-if meeting the how-to. It's a great model for innovation or even just personal growth.
Then there's a chapter that gives you pause. Too much, too soon, too fast.
Ooh, a cautionary tale.
Definitely. It's a warning that success, especially rapid success, can be really fragile. It can actually collapse under its own weight if you're not ready for it.
We tend to only focus on the upside of success.
Right. We dream of that rocket ship trajectory. But Housel points out the hidden dangers. Think of startups that scale incredibly fast but haven't built the culture or systems to handle it, and then they implode.
Or individuals who get famous or rich really quickly before they have the maturity or support to handle the pressure.
Exactly. It happens all the time.
It's such a counterintuitive but crucial point. Success itself can be a major risk if it's unmanaged. It makes you ask, am I preparing not just for failure, but for handling success well?
That's a really interesting question.
Because rapid growth can outstrip your ability to cope, your decision-making skills, your support network. It implies that sometimes slower, more deliberate growth is actually much more resilient and ultimately more sustainable.
And then there's a chapter title that honestly sums up the whole book. History is mostly the same stuff happening again.
Huh. Yeah, that could have been the title of the book itself.
Right. It just perfectly captures his main argument. The clothes change, the tech changes, the names change, but the underlying human dramas, the motivations, the patterns of behavior, strikingly similar across time.
And it really highlights why knowing history is so valuable. Not to predict the exact future because details always vary, but to understand the perennial patterns, to see the grammar of human action. History becomes this huge data set of unchanging behavior. Studying it gives you wisdom, helps you spot the common pitfalls and the enduring opportunities because you recognize the human constants driving events.
Yes, seeing the underlying script.
Exactly.
Okay, one last chapter that really made me think was Calm Plants the Seeds of Crazy.
Now that sounds paradoxical.
It really does. The idea is that long stretches of peace and stability, things feeling good and predictable, they can actually create the conditions for the next big disruption.
How does that work?
Well, Housel argues that calm breeds complacency. When things are stable for a long time, people forget risk. They take on more debt, make riskier bets, assume the good times will last forever.
Irrational exuberance creeps in.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Think about the early 2000s boom leading into the 2008 crash. Everything felt great, stable, which allowed the underlying risks, the leverage, to build up unnoticed until it all blew up.
So the calm itself creates the vulnerability.
Yeah. Or even more recently, that post-pandemic surge, the tech boom. Things felt euphoric for a bit, which then set the stage for the tech layoffs and the market pullbacks. The stability allowed for overextension, which then snapped back.
It's a profound warning, isn't it, that calm doesn't necessarily mean safe. It can be the very period where future instability is quietly brewing, precisely because it lowers everyone's guard. It happens in markets, but also in societies, maybe even personal lives. It forces you to question that feeling of normalcy, to stay vigilant even when, maybe especially when, things feel calm and predictable. It's about resisting that complacency, looking for the risks that build up when everyone else thinks things are just fine.
So let's try and bring this all together as we wrap up. Thinking about Same as Ever, it strikes me it's not really a how-to book in the typical sense.
No, it's not a step-by-step guide.
Right. It feels more like a how it always is reminder about the fundamental truths of being human, dealing with money, facing uncertainty. And that feels incredibly valuable right now.
Especially now.
We're just bombarded with trends, right? Everyone's chasing the next big thing, the shortcut, the revolution.
The noise level is high.
So high. But Morgan Housel kind of gently pulls us back and says, hang on. Don't forget the basics. Because understanding the future isn't just about the shiny new object. It's often more about understanding what doesn't change. Human nature, incentives, emotions, risk.
Yeah.
These constants. They're the bedrock.
And that perspective is genuinely empowering for you, the listener. It gives you this timeless lens. The surface of the world will keep churning, changing.
Always.
But if you understand these deep, unchanging forces, that gives you a real lasting advantage. You can filter the noise, focus on what truly matters, build more resilience, make better long-term bets. It brings a kind of calm, actually, knowing you're grounded in perennial truths, not just reacting to every fleeting headline.
So the big takeaway here, what does it all mean for you? I think it's this. Don't only study what's changing. Make a real effort diligently, consistently to pay close attention to what isn't changing.
That's where the deep wisdom lies.
Exactly. That's where you find the real insights, the tools to keep yourself grounded, centered, even when everything feels chaotic and unpredictable. It's about seeing those repeating human patterns, understanding those unchanging drivers, and building your life, your plans, your finances in a way that acknowledges and accounts for them, including those inevitable surprises that come from overlooking the familiar.
Which leads us to a final thought, a question for you to take away and maybe mull over.
Okay.
In your own experience, your own life, your career, what's one fundamental principle or behavior or pattern that you've really noticed stays constant? Something that holds true, regardless of changing circumstances or new technologies around you.
That's a great reflection point.
Maybe it's the importance of trust or the power of consistent effort or just the inevitability of setbacks requiring adaptation. Whatever it is for you, identify that same as ever truth you've observed. And then ask yourself, how has recognizing that unchanging reality impacted your perspective? How has it shaped your decisions, or maybe how should it shape them as you navigate this world obsessed with change?